Hi, and welcome to the first episode of TV POV for the new year. I'm Jen.
And I'm Melissa.
We took a little bit of a hiatus for the holidays, which were packed full of lots of fun as usual, but TV is really rearing up again, so there's lots to talk about.
I've got some cancellations to discuss. Something that we discussed early on in the season, which was Red Band Society, and we kind of had some high hopes for. Unfortunately, has been put on the chopping block. It will be able to finish out the episodes that were filmed.
Which how many overall?
I can't recall. I think it might have been 13.
13, yeah.
So that won't be coming back. I know there was talk about it potentially being picked up by another network or a streaming service, but that didn't work out. So time to say goodbye.
Yeah, and I think this one had a little more sort of goodwill and a little more leeway, given that it's Steven Spielberg who was behind it, and there was some good press. I know they ordered extra scripts even when the ratings were in the toilet.
Yeah.
So I quite enjoyed it, and I'll be happy for the little season that we have. But it's no surprise. I think I almost sort of felt like it was already canceled.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed. I watched it. I watched everything that has aired up to this point, and really enjoyed it. But I didn't know how sustainable it would be beyond a first season. And then another cancellation, which is a show that we discussed. I think it was in our last episode before the hiatus. Was Benched. Which was a USA Network comedy that was starring Eliza Coupe, who was amazing.
Yeah.
I watched a few of the episodes and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. So I'm not shocked it was canceled.
Yeah. I remember when we talked about it, it was sort of that was, a show.
Well, I mean, the idea of it was kind of neat. And Eliza Coupe plays those roles so well. And one of the co-creators was Michaela Watkins, who I really like. Yeah. So I mean, having a woman as a co-executive producer and female-led comedy, like, those are good things, but unfortunately it didn't all work out. Yeah,
I thought it had a good chance of success on USA because those types of comedies tend to work in that form. But I think it says something like I watched it so we could talk about it. I kind of enjoyed it and I was not at all compelled to keep watching. And I think that was maybe, the type of lack of devotion that a show like that inspires, so that kind of spells due.
And then something that's not canceled, but if they keep jerking it around, it's gonna end up canceled. I'm looking at you, NBC, and your treatment of Constantine, which has been such an amazing series. John Constantine is a fantastic character, and I love the books. So first of all, it being on NBC made me a bit apprehensive because I didn't know how true they could stay to the story, like the edginess and the darkness of it, which they've done a really good job of. And they've really built on that initial episode. The one thing that's really making me nervous is they've switched the time slot. It was a Friday night 10 p.m. show,
which is where it belongs with what I've seen. Well, it's dark.
It 10 o'clock definitely, but not on a Friday.
No, but it's a 10 p.m.
But now
show.
they've moved it to 8 p.m. And when it returned at 8 p.m., a lot of people didn't know it returned. So the ratings were crap. So it's like they're setting it up for failure, and I really don't want that to happen. If for whatever reason the show does not continue on NBC, I really hope there's an option to take it elsewhere. I know some people have said, well, can Netflix do it? I don't know if Netflix can because of the Marvel deal that they have and because Constantine's in the DC world.
Because it would actually work. It would work well on Netflix.
And it's an extremely bingeable show because it's the type of show that, you've got that progression and each episode builds upon the last and just integrating all of the mythology, and I think they've written the characters really well. Like, I'm really enjoying the character development and, just learning more about them, and something needs to happen. The other problem is there are so many people who are not starting new serialized shows because they're scared they're going to get invested and then it gets canceled. Which is partially why shows are getting canceled now, is because they're not given as much time to develop an audience and people aren't tuning in, and then it gets canceled and they're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't watch it anyway because it was canceled. Well, maybe if all of those people who said they were waiting for it to get picked up for, a full season or a second season. If they had watched it, we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Sometimes you do kind of have to wear your heart on your sleeve when you're a television fan. You have to just take that risk.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, people will stop making the type of shows that you really want to watch. So in development and pickup news, an interesting one this week is that Fox has decided to pick up a remake of the hit BBC show Luther.
Did they learn nothing from Grace Point?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Interestingly enough, we have a Grace Point-esque situation in which Idris Elba, who I love, obviously, as I love David Tennant as well, maybe it's like we need to go find out why these guys are willing to do it. I guess it's like America and it's a big deal. But, I mean, Idris Elba certainly has tons of movie work. He's a really respected guy. But he is starring in a remake of his own show on Fox that he is also executive producing.
When the reasoning that they gave when I went to TCA last summer and they were presenting Grace Point, and the reason they said why they were doing it with one of the same actors was because the majority of the American viewing public, like the American viewing audience, didn't know what Broadchurch was. No one had seen it, so it was something new, and most of the people who watched it were the critics in the room.
Yeah.
And people who are fans of British television. So I can kind of understand it from that perspective, that it's opening up this show to a much larger audience.
Yeah. What really bugs me though is it's not so much that they're getting the same person to play it. I mean, that's a problem to me, I think. But my thing is, if the original show was so good and you can't offer a new spin on it, that you're just going to get the same person to do it, maybe it doesn't need to be made at all.
Exactly.
Like the excuse that people haven't seen Broadchurch or they haven't seen Luther, it's like, okay, that might be true, but you don't just remake something because someone hasn't seen it unless you have something new to bring to the table. And that includes finding a new actor. And it's not to say that you're going to find a better actor, but it's different. Like, the good example of that would be The Office, you know? They didn't... Can you imagine if they'd just been like, hey, Ricky Gervais is going to star in an American version of The Office and talk in an American accent, which Ricky Gervais would never do, and I kind of would actually like to see. But what they did, they didn't remake David Brent. They found a new way to tell the tale of office mundanity and of coworkers and this weird family through a new character. So, which Steve Carell played. So that made sense. It seems to me is they're getting these guys to redo their characters, and it means that they're not really offering as new a spin on the show. And this is just a pilot at this stage, so it might not work out, but they've at least committed to a pilot. And they committed to 3 other pilots this week as well. One we talked about briefly before when the idea was in development, and it's called Frankenstein, but it's a it's a retelling of Frankenstein, in which Frankenstein is a morally corrupt cop brought back to life, forced to re-examine his behavior now that he's, like, I'm guessing, some version of a zombie. Although hopefully not with, like, zippers down his face.
Still not gonna watch this.
No, I will not watch that either. But it's, sadly, it's getting closer and closer to the point at which it will actually air, because it is now a pilot and not just a weird idea. They've also picked up something called Rosewood, which is about a Miami pathologist, so it's kind of like your crime show.
So like a procedural?
Yeah, it's a closed-ended investigative series. So there you go. Who knows, that could be good or bad, whatever. And they've picked up something else, a comedy called 48 Hours Till Monday, which is a single camera comedy, but it kind of sounds really multi-camera. It's about a guy who's just trying to get through the weekend, or trying to make the weekend last as long as possible. Sorry, I should say the opposite. So it's kind of like, it's like you work 9 to 5 every day, and you have 48 hours to live your life. I'm not sure whether he's a family guy or a partier or whatever. I mean, nah.
Yeah.
If it was done in a really clever way and with a really clever, really good comedian attached, but it almost kind of sounds like it's a multi-camera comedy idea to me.
Yeah. Recently, the Television Critics Association tour happened in Los Angeles, where all of the networks and everything presented upcoming shows, and Netflix had their whole upcoming slate of shows that they were presenting. Immediately following, just this week, they announced a pickup of a new comedy series called Flaked, and it puts them in even more of the Will Arnett game, because this is a series that he is executive producing and starring in. Some of the other production team includes it's Mitch Hurwitz, right, from Arrested development.
And he's got a good relationship with Will Arnett. They did that show called Running Wild after, which didn't last, but I thought was quite kind of clever.
Yeah.
And I think the Will Arnett business is a business that you definitely want to be in.
Not to mention frickin' BoJack Horseman, which was, in my opinion, one of the best shows of 2014.
I know, I've never seen this, and I just can't get past the title, but like,
oh my god, well, neither could I, and there was nothing on at this specific time, so I put on a couple of the episodes, and honestly, it is one of the best shows, animated or not.
Yeah.
Like, the character development, like, it blew my mind. It was that good. Anyway, I digress. So this show, Flaked, is about a self-help guru who thinks he's all that, and it takes place in Venice, California, which is kind of, you know, a little bit of a
Venice Beach, a little bit of
flaky.
Weird.
Yeah, there's a bit of that flakiness going on down there, and he falls for someone who I believe it's his best friend.
Yeah, it's
has
like,
a thing for.
Yeah, so I guess it sounds like it's sort of. You know, Will Arnett has a bit of a shtick, which is okay when you're a comedy star, and his shtick is always a little bit like the self-involved guy who sometimes has a little bit of a core, but you gotta dig really deep to see it, and there's a lot of flake on the surface.
Which is totally BoJack Horseman. Not a word of a lie.
You're like, whatever we're talking about, I can bring it back to BoJack Horseman.
It's worth bringing it back to.
Okay, no, I know.
Like, for real. So, I believe it's going to be an 8-episode comedy series for 2016.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all turns out, but we've still got at least another year until anything happens.
Waiting is the best part, especially with Netflix.
We've got some casting news, some pretty big casting news.
Yes. We all know that CBS is working on Supergirl.
Which we've discussed.
We have discussed, yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit like, don't really care about CBS. Personally, not that into Supergirl, but it is big news. It's like probably their first superhero thing in the modern era for sure.
Yeah.
So they have cast an actress called Melissa Benoist.
Yes.
Who was in season 4 and 5 of Glee.
Yep.
Otherwise known as seasons of Glee that nobody watched. Sorry.
Did.
Well, did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Do you watch Glee?
I hate watching Glee.
All I know is that she's one of those new people that they put on the show after some of the old people left who I could not pick out of a lineup.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, good for her. That's a great role for anybody to land, especially if it does well, and it'll certainly put her on the map.
But she's also in that film Whiplash, which has gotten a lot of award buzz this season.
Yeah. I'm just really skeptical at this point about Supergirl. It's a really hard one to do, I think. It's hard to not... You have to have the right amount of tongue-in-cheek, but not too much tongue-in-cheek. Mm-hmm. And I don't trust CBS with a lot of things, other than The Good Wife.
I don't know, but the team that's behind it is the same team that is doing The Flash, that's doing Arrow. Another big casting news from the past couple of weeks, Heroes Reborn. I loved Heroes Season 1.
I think everybody loved Heroes Season 1.
I liked Heroes Season 2.
Less people liked Heroes Season 2. Less people than that liked Heroes Season 3. And then less people than that liked...
So I wasn't excited, but I'm like, well, maybe they can, revisit the world in a way. It is a limited series, so, we'll have a closed-end story, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I was mildly intrigued to see what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And then they cast the lead. And I am so in now because it's Zachary Levi, aka Chuck Bartowski, aka the best person on the planet. So now I'm going to watch whether it sucks or not.
Yes, I will too. And I really think they should call this series Heroes Do-Over. That's what I would call it. Like, for me, it's like, oops, we took a really simple concept that we started really well, that we really had no business screwing up, and we totally ran it into the ground. So let's pretend it didn't happen. We're gonna start over. We promise it's still cool. And look, Zach Levi, you love him, right? Nerds, he's your people. So obviously, like, that's one way to get the nerds back in. He is their people.
He is the king of our people.
He's one of, I don't know if he's the king, but he's definitely in the royal court. He's got a seat alongside of the other royals. Yeah.
Yeah. So. I am now totally on board with this. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I'm interested to see who else they're going to bring into it and to learn more about the character he's going to be playing.
Yes.
I like the idea of it being a fixed, you know,
Definitely.
a fixed story.
Definitely.
And if it does well, maybe they could do something along the lines of like what they're doing with American Horror Story and stuff like that, where, you know, every season it's a new cast of characters and carry it on that way instead of rehashing the same thing over and over.
No, I think that these limited series are a good way to sort of test the waters. It's a good way to say, look, we're going to give you the best series that we can that's 8 episodes long. If it happens to do well, we'll try to come up with a plan to extend that or reinvent it or something.
Yeah.
But all we're going to promise you now, it means that it's like they're promising you like less up front, and then therefore you're kind of less pissed off if it doesn't go well. In a weird way, they're kind of hedging those bets. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, most definitely.
I'm crossing my fingers for Heroes Do-Over. As this is our first episode back after the new year, when, as we said, TV shows are ramping back up, but also we're getting a bunch of new ones as well.
Yep.
Some of the mid-seasons starting. So we thought we'd do a review of as many that we've both seen. There's kind of, you know, 5 or 6 floating out there that are kind of just starting. So we're going to talk about 3 of them today. We've both sort of been able to catch up on. And the first is Fox's Empire, which came out of the gate with a huge cast. We're talking Terrence Howard, Academy Award nominee, with Taraji P. Henson, who's like brilliant. Actually, that's pretty much it, then a bunch of unknown people. But the writer and creator of The Butler, and also co-written by Jonathan from Buffy, who I'm going to call him that for the rest of his life. Even though he's going to have like so many credentials that are better than that, he's still going to be Jonathan from Buffy. It's really about a hip-hop empire that is sort of being almost attacked on 2 fronts. The turmoil is being caused by an ex-wife getting out of jail and wanting her piece of that pie, and where she fits in with a family that has existed for a long time with her being behind bars, and the head of the empire coming down with ALS. So that's the plot of that show. And
it's also a hip-hop King Lear, which is really, really cool.
I didn't even think of, I never get the Shakespeare thing.
Yeah, it's King Lear.
But that makes sense.
Yeah. So, it out of the gate, it had so many viewers, it broke records. That numbers that Fox haven't seen in a long time.
I believe the 3rd episode, which just aired, is up to 10 million plus, which is a really big deal for a Fox drama.
It's grown every week.
That doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't happen.
Things usually drop off after the first
Especially
episode.
without a stunt casting or sweeps or anything. Like, you expect that kind of drop. So having said that, you know, obviously, big cast is doing well. What did you think of it?
You know what? I totally did not. This was something I didn't even want to watch because I don't know. It just the idea of it didn't grab me. King Lear's probably one of my least favorite Shakespeare stories, so I'm like, Curiosity got the better of me, and I watched the first one, and I'm like, there's something different about this show. Like you can feel there's something different about this story. There's something different about the characters. It's a really interesting dynamic. Basically what it comes down to is this mogul is going to die. He has a debilitating condition that is one of the most horrible things you could end up with, in my opinion. And he's got these 3 sons, and he's trying to pick who's going to take over the empire. So, you know, there's the oldest son who's the business headed, who seems to be like the most put together and has the wife, but he's battling mental illness, and, you know, he's unfaithful, and, you know, there's that. And then there's the middle son who's really, really talented, but because of what his father deems a lifestyle choice, he doesn't get the same treatment. And then there's the baby boy, Hakeem, who's, you know, kind of the burgeoning star, but he's such a little asshole. Total little asshole. I'm totally gonna say that. Even though it's kind of a big, outrageous kind of world, it still feels grounded. It feels real. Taraji P. Henson, who I thought was fantastic on Person of Interest, is just owning it. Cookie Lyon is a force to be reckoned with. She's probably one of my favorite new TV characters. She walks in, she owns that room when she's in it. And it's, I mean, her performance is a little more, it's a little more big. It's a grand. But what really got me is some of the more subtle performances. The three sons of the three, Jamal has such a fantastic story. Yeah. Being gay in this world where it's not always accepted. What I read afterward was there was an interview with Danny Strong with Lee Daniels, and Lee Daniels, the flashback scene where Lucius throws Jamal in the garbage,
because he had dressed up in like female clothing.
Yeah, that happened to Lee Daniels.
It's powerful stuff.
It's extremely powerful.
Now, it's interesting because I was dying to see this series. I sort of had the opposite take on it. When I saw the preview back when they were, you know, doing all the upfronts and everything for the shows, and I knew this was going to be a mid-season, I could not wait. I wanted to see it so badly. And I was a little disappointed in this show, actually. And it's funny because I think that one of the things that bugged me is actually Cookie. Which is, as you were talking about that, I was like, it's because she is so big. She takes up so much space in that show, and I love Taraji P. Henson, but I find it a little much. I found her so front and center that I didn't get into the heads of a lot of the other characters. And I found some of them to be a little stereotypical. I mean, Jamal he's the one that I like the most. And it would be easy to call his storyline stereotypical because at this point we've all seen so many coming out stories, and it's almost cliche to have a storyline where, you know, people's parents don't accept them because they're gay. But you have to remember that in the hip-hop world, it's not like that. In fact, one of the most interesting examples of that was, I just forgot the name, LA Complex. Mm-hmm. If you ever watched it, but there was this really hard rapper on here who had like this romantic storyline. He was so conflicted. And that happened around the same time as Frank Ocean, a real life rap artist, came out as being homosexual and was very successful, sold records, got lots of awards. So it's still a very relevant topic in this world, which is why I think that it works, and it probably wouldn't work as well in another show because, you know, you'd be like, okay, we've seen this, we have to have another level to just that. So so far I've just kind of found it all over the place. I'm just a little disappointed in it, and I guess it's interesting to hear you're so positive about it too, because you weren't as looking forward to it. So I don't know, maybe my expectations were too high.
I had zero expectations.
Yeah, so I had these really high expectations,
it was curiosity to see if, you know, all the hype it was getting, if it was definitely living up to it.
But one thing I will say is that I didn't realize it was going to be as musical as it is. I knew it was going to be set in hip-hop worlds, but it's basically Nashville
what I was gonna say.
For the African American, for that part of the business, as opposed to
less soapy. Nashville is very soapy.
I find this soapy too. I do. It's hard to say.
Not as.
It's hard to say because Nashville didn't start off quite as soapy. Yeah. It kind of, it happens as it goes, right? Yeah. So like taking the pilot of Nashville and then the pilot of this, I was pleasantly surprised by how much music actually played in. And one thing I will say is I bought the soundtrack to this show.
And it's original music, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, Nashville is as well. So again, that's a comparison. But But I expected that from Nashville. I didn't expect there to be as much, you know, full performances and sort of musical moments as in this show. I really, really like that part of it. So, I mean, I'll still keep watching, especially for that part. But I think, you know, it was just sort of, I was a little let down by Taraji P. Henson's character, and also a little bit by Terrence Howard's character too. I mean, there's not that many levels to him right now. It's, you know, he's a good actor and he's doing a good job, but his character doesn't compel me. He doesn't compel me enough to like him as a protagonist or to hate him as a protagonist.
Another premiere that took place this month that I was so excited for was Agent Carter, which is taking place for, I believe it's 8 episodes.
I think so.
It's a shorter run, and it's going to Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to pick up after this concludes. First of all, Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter character is a character that I loved from the films. she's a kick-ass female spy. Like, hello.
Yeah.
In an era that I'm particularly fascinated with in terms of how these women got to be front and center and play all these roles, and then the second that the men came back from war, the women were, you know, shoved back into the kitchens and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was really excited for it, and I have to say the first 3 episodes that have aired so far, I'm really enjoying it.
Yes.
I like the mystery that they've set up, that they've got us questioning Howard Stark and, you know, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? What is he up to? There's a new mystery, like in terms of something that they're up against. And her having to hide who she really is from her, even though she's working with the SSR, she has to kind of play second fiddle to all the men. Meanwhile, she's the one who's really...
She's getting it done.
She's getting it done.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't particularly in love with Peggy Carter's character. I mean, it was enjoyable, but I was kind of surprised when they announced this as a show because it seemed like an odd thing to do. But I do think it's been really, really well done. And I think that what gives it its sort of special flair is that it's not pretending to be anything that it's not.
Exactly.
You know? They marketed it really well. Mm-hmm. It's a limited run series, and it's just about this little era. It's a cool old-fashioned spy show that just kind of happens to have Marvel in the title.
Yeah.
And it works really well. She is so good she's such a real woman. She's so gorgeous. She's smart. She just screams real to me.
Uh-huh.
It kind of has like a little bit of an Alias vibe to it of the time.
I've noticed that.
Because not only is she hiding, like she's hiding from the guys that she works with. They know she's a spy, but they don't know how good a spy she is. Mm-hmm. Or they should know, but they refuse to acknowledge it because most of them are dicks, except for Sousa.
Yeah.
Who's not a dick and is really kind of cute.
Anytime Enver Yokai's in anything, he's just amazing.
Yeah. So she's hiding that, but then she's also, you know, she's doing a lot of what Sydney Bristow did in Alias. You know, I work for the phone company, and she's living with these other girls in an apartment building and pretending she's got this lovely waitress friend, Lindsay Fonseca. I keep saying Fonseca, who, you know, wants to get closer to her, but is kind of
Angie
blocked because, you know, she's got to go do all this other, you know, spy butt kicking stuff, and that she doesn't really understand. So there's that to it, and they capture the era really well, really era appropriate, sort of like the way even the dialogue. It's very smart.
The colors.
Oh God,
the palette that they're using is stunning, and I can't help but gush over the wardrobe.
Oh God, I want those hats.
I want the dresses. I want all the dresses.
Yes.
So it's been a really intriguing story. Jarvis, having a human Jarvis is so cool, and not knowing exactly what he's up to, and this wife that we only hear the voice. Yeah. You know,
they have a good buddy dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah, so it's just this really rich world, and we're promised, you know, kind of a closed-end story. Mm-hmm. I'm loving it. What I think I'd like to see is if this does prove to be successful, you know, bring it back every year for, you know, 8 episodes and have like a closed-end story, so that in the event that maybe one year doesn't do so well, you're not left with a big cliffhanger or anything. But I totally would be on board for, you know, 8 episodes of Peggy Carter a year.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The one thing that is a little flat is all of her male coworkers, aside from Sousa. They all kind of blend in together, and you've got some sort of half famous faces in there. That is the guy from One Tree Hill, right?
Yeah, that's Chad Michael Murray.
Thank you, right, and that guy.
But then the head of them is Shea Wiggum, who was Nucky's brother on Boardwalk Empire.
But they're all very like paint by numbers kind of dry guys right now. And I also want to see more of Sousa, because they've built him up as kind of like a potential ally or even a potential love interest. And right now it's pretty much the Peggy Jarvis buddy show, which is good because they have a good dynamic. But they also set up this other world that maybe has a little bit dry, and I can't imagine they'll be able to develop it so much in the remaining episodes, given there's only 8. So that's one part that could have been addressed a little better.
One final series that we're going to discuss that debuted recently is SyFy's 12 Monkeys, which a lot of people are like, hey, wait, wasn't that a movie in the 90s? Well, yes, it was. It was 20 years ago that film came out.
God, that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago, 1995.
Yeah. I have not seen the movie, so I literally I knew next to nothing coming into this series.
I've seen the movie. I just watched it within the past year, though. And the movie's, I enjoyed it. I don't love it. I know it has a huge cult following.
Yeah.
When people first heard that they were turning it into a TV series, they're like, oh, another movie to a TV series.
Yeah.
Oh, they're never going to be able to do anything good. Well, erase those thoughts from your brain, and if you haven't watched this first episode yet, please go watch it, because it is fantastic. It is, and I'm gonna be right out there, and I'm gonna say this as someone who was a huge Battlestar Galactica fan, and I've been waiting for SyFy to do another solid, amazing sci-fi series, like science fiction. This is it. It has everything, and one of the things that I love the most about this show is that it respects its audience right out of the gate. And it doesn't spoon feed you, and it doesn't talk down to you.
No.
And it doesn't treat you like you're a moron.
No.
It is so smartly written. The roles are intriguing. It's not the same roles from the film. Well, Cole is kind of the same as the Bruce Willis role, but the Madeline Stowe character is now someone named Cassie.
Yeah.
Who is a doctor and
she's played by Amanda Shaw, who I'm sure has done many things in her career, but I will only ever remember her from Center Stage. Did you ever see that dancing movie?
No.
And she was the ballerina who, like, they didn't want to take because she wasn't the perfect ballerina and her feet didn't turn out, she didn't have enough training, and she ended up doing some alternative ballet dance and showed them all. It was to, like, Jamiroquai or something. Totally off topic, but I'm super happy. And I didn't even realize, like, I didn't really look into the casting a lot other than Aaron Sanford, so I'm watching the thing and I was like, oh my god, that's the girl from Center Stage. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
But you are right. Knowing nothing about the movie, not really reading a lot of the sort of press about this, it was really very good. I was sucked into it right away. Half the time I had no idea what was going on, but in a good way. Like you say, they assume that if you're intrigued enough, you will stick around to be slowly given bits of information that will entice you, rather than assume that you have to know every damn thing that's happening right from the beginning. Otherwise you're turning off that TV because you don't have time for this crap. No, it's like really kind of slow unravel that just makes you go, oh my god, WTF, what is happening? This is awesome.
Yeah, and the whole idea of, medical experimentation and things that they think are going to be a benefit, like, an immunization that goes out of control and causes havoc. In this case, we're dealing with a plague that, wipes out almost all of the population of the earth, and someone's going from the future back to 2015 trying to prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the casting, I think, was great. Aaron Stanford, I am so happy to see him front and center as a lead in a series. He was my favorite part of Nikita.
He was pretty good.
So he will forever be nerd to me, but I am absolutely, I am absolutely loving him.
Now he's a future nerd.
Yeah, exactly. He's totally a future nerd. And then taking the character that in the film was the one that Brad Pitt made famous and making it a woman, which is another one of the BSG comparisons for me.
Right.
When they made Starbuck a woman.
Yes, and they did that.
But it doesn't feel like the same character. It feels like she's maybe a sister or a cousin. It's not like they've reinvented the character.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, I think that's pretty cool. The only thing that I thought, and at first I was like, oh, again, is Zelko Ivanek, who plays a variation on that same character in every show he's in.
But he's a weird looking dude though. Like he's it's like how some people have a face and you're like, that's your thing. Your face says this to me. His face says kind of shady, corrupt, a little bit maniacal. Like that's what his face says. It's like how Benedict Cumberbatch's face says, I'm socially awkward and have and have a difficult time conversing with you, and I'm good looking but bizarre. And it's interesting because you cast them for their unique faces, but then it's a double-edged sword because sometimes it's hard to see past, it's like if he tried to give you a hug, would you not be like, okay?
I don't know. Do you have a knife you're gonna put in my mouth? But I mean, he's good at those roles.
He's great at them.
But every time I see him cast in something, I'm like, so I guess he's the bad guy. You know? So that was the only thing that was kind of like, but he was good in the first episode.
He was, yeah.
And I'm waiting for this story to unravel. Also knowing that they're not just going to be going back and forth between 2 time periods. They're going to be several different time periods. So you're going to have to be... Something you see in episode 1 may not pay off till episode 4. Which I love. Yeah. All of the theorizing and, trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Which is great.
I'm loving this.
What I would say about the pilot is I'm surprised at how little I know about what's going on and yet how much I care. Yeah. Which is great, because it's really gonna draw me back into the world, which I yet don't know that much about. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting. I think it's a stellar job for sure.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to go to the set, and the set is spectacular.
That's really cool.
That machine is crazy. The detail, the amount of detail put into this thing is so cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that type of scale of sci-fi for sure. That's really exciting.
And I believe it did well.
Well, that's good.
For sci-fi as well. So
this is almost, I guess, like one of the first steps that we're seeing towards the new sci-fi, the new old sci-fi. Yeah. Sci-fi being new by being old. Yeah. I think that pretty much wraps up this week. January, January can be a bad month for a lot of reasons because Christmas is over, you're done with cold, you're done with winter, but the return of new TV is like the only joy of January. So I'm really happy for that, and it's been really cool to see a lot of these new series come out. Yeah. We're planning on getting back to the segments on the website now that there's lots to talk about, so please do check that out at watchtvpov.com. We promise there will be stuff to actually watch.
And thanks for coming back to join us. Happy New Year to everyone. We're really happy that you're checking things out.
Yes.
And if you do have any comments or feedback or suggestions, you can always hit us up on the website.
Yeah. And we'll see you next week.
Most definitely. Take care.
Bye.